16 slips. We're eventually going to put a floating dock in here for some jet skis. But the property wraps all the way around, and it's pretty cool. Elizabeth River Project's building a research center over there. We're going to put a bunch of oyster castles and a living shoreline, and we got to expand parking to make room for it. But yeah, so this is the basement. Eventually, it's going to be like check-in for guests, little hangout. There's like it's all storage right now, but eventually we'll have a desk and sitting area and a TV and.
I love this space.
And dude, yeah, it's an awesome space. It's going to work out really well for what we need. We're pretty excited about it.
It's like almost like a little lounge area.
Right, that's exactly what it's going to be. We'll have like a desk over here for check-in, but there'll be a tutorial, but like boating 101 and stuff. But most of the boats are pretty low speed. They're going 5 knots, so liability isn't huge, thankfully.
Shout out Sean.
Changing the game through real estate, yeah. Changing the game through real estate. I can never wait, got what it takes to got this on my plate. And I got a budget, teach you how to save. Listen to this podcast, you will be amazed. Play this any morning, any night, any day. We're the winning team, we were born to be brave. Yeah, changing the game through real estate, yeah.
Welcome to the Changing the Game podcast. I guess
like
this is
it.
episode 36. I always screw up your last name. It's
Pinzon.
Erick Pinzon.
So I'm Colombian. It's Pinzon if you're saying it with an accent, but
Okay.
Pinzon for most people.
Okay, yeah, I'm gonna have to say it like that because I could possibly say it the other way.
Yeah.
But so we met I think it was like a couple months ago, and I just loved your story, like how you kind of get into real estate.
Right.
So what really kind of got you like in real estate originally? What was like the aha moment that, hey, like I want to get in real estate? I know you play the cash flow game all the time.
That's what it was. So I was 19, making good money as a mechanic, and a guy there, a buddy of mine, Sam, said, "Hey, you're making too much money. You got to invest it." And said, he gave me Rich Dad Poor Dad. Never heard of it. I didn't get any financial literacy through, high school or parents or anything. I learned what not to do with money growing up, but not a whole lot of, hey, this is investing, savings, or anything. And I read Rich Dad Poor Dad, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to buy a house every year, and I'm going to retire early. Mm-hmm. And I was probably like 19 years old. I'd already went to automotive trade school. I was working at BMW, making really good money for my age and blowing it at the bar and on vacations and stuff. And I think it was right around 19 years old. And I told my spouse, I'm like, hey, it's going to be a long ride, but we're going to retire by 40. We're going to live like peasants and buy a house every year, and hopefully, 2 a year, 3 a year, whatever it turns into. And we bought our first house at 20 years old over in Ocean Lakes, still a rental to this day.
Yeah.
We bought 3 houses in 3 years. And then Tesla came around in 2012. Actually, we had only been in a house like 9 months. And I had a buddy that convinced me to ride in a Tesla Roadster, and it kind of ruined me in terms of how BMW was and how where they thought they were going.
Yeah.
And we moved to San Diego, lived with Grandma, and I traveled around for Tesla way too much. We realized we couldn't afford Southern California on what I was making. So we were trying to come back to the East Coast, and Maryland was the only thing open, and I wanted to stay with the company. And so we moved up there they told us 6 to 12 months while they opened a dealer in Richmond or Virginia Beach. And come to find out, Virginia doesn't like manufacturers running car dealerships, and the dealer association has a lot of lobbying money. Mm-hmm. So they fought tooth and nail for years, and it got to the point where I told Tesla, I'm like, hey, I got to get back home. And I went from management back to being a technician, and I was a mobile technician. And it sounds cool, but it was like 80, 90 hours a week, driving the entire state, hotels 3 to 4 nights a week. And we did that for a few years, and then we started buying houses because we put it on pause for like 5 years when I was working stupid hours, and we only had, I think, 3 rentals. Then 2018 hit, Tesla stock is skyrocketing because I'd gotten options throughout that whole process. The pay there is peanuts compared to what you can make at another Highline dealer, but the benefits are amazing, and the stock options were life-changing, literally.
Yeah.
And I mean, back in 2012 when I joined them, it was luck and a little bit of hope and faith, and but at the time I'm making great money with this.
Tesla was like skyrocketed.
Well, and the Model S wasn't even out then, so they had these cool little cars that were $110,000, $105,000 starting, and there's 2,500 of them worldwide. Like that is such a tiny segment, and it was like their proof of concept. And here I am leaving this established dealership, making great money to go take a 65-70% pay cut, move across the country.
Yeah.
And so like everybody is like, hey, what are you doing? This is stupid. Like even my mom was like, hey, are you sure? Like this might not be a good idea. But it's like now if you're going to do it, now's the time to take a risk. We didn't have a kid or anything. And I left BMW on good terms, and it's like, hey, if this fails, I'll be back.
Yeah. That says a lot about your wife, though. Like, hey, I'm going to go for this. I'm taking a pay cut, but hey, you believe in me, right? Like,
yeah, huge pay cut. And it's like, we just got our own house, you know, living in Ocean Lakes, living it up. And I was making, I mean, literally 70, 80 grand at 20 years old. Ridiculous money. And I mean, her money was fun money, and we were doing well. And it's like, hey, we're going to go back, live with grandma. You know, cost of living's 2 to 3 times what it was here.
Yeah.
I literally, I still have my initial offer letter is $17 an hour to go work for Tesla in San Diego. They tried before that, the year before in 2011. Stupid me, I didn't take the offer to go work in Manhattan. They literally offered me $19 an hour to go work in Manhattan. And I had just finished interviewing for a potential job in Dubai, and they had a housing package with it, you know, a car lease, an au pair, private school, and all of this was part of the compensation package. And so I got this package from Tesla for Manhattan for $19 an hour. And I was like, oh, is there housing? You know, is there a housing package with this? And they're like, no, that's kind of is what it is. Like, how am I going to live in Manhattan for this price? And they didn't even delay. Their response was, you're going to be working so much overtime, you'll hardly notice your base pay. I'm like, wait, that's not a good response. And no bullshit though, I got hired on and worked, 80, 90 hour weeks was like average. I remember qualifying for a loan when we were getting probably our third house, and they said, sorry, you didn't qualify. I'm like, what the hell you mean I didn't qualify? You know, I made pretty good money last year. And they said, oh, we can't count your overtime because it's not consistent. So I gave them literally 4 years of pay stubs. I gave them access to my ADP account, and it was 4 years. And my loan officer at Atlantic Bay at the time, she's like, you realize you averaged 78 hours a week for the last 4 years? I'm like, thought it was more than that, honestly.
Easy.
Right, yeah. And she's like, that's unhealthy. I'm like, I don't have a choice. Like, that is what it is. But like back then, everyone was in for the movement, you know, so it's kind of just the way it was. And my spouse was on board, and I was a workaholic, but I loved it. You know, it wasn't like, oh God, I got to go to work again. It's like, hey, let's go kill this day. We're going to crush it. And we did what we did. And we took a sacrifice. Our relationship wasn't the best for a couple years. And a lot of it was stemmed because I was a workaholic. But it got to the point, like 2018, 19 hit, I think. And we're like, hey, our stock options are turned into a good amount of money. Let's start diversifying into real estate with the goal to retire in 5 years and retire the W-2, you know?
Yeah. Because your story is so interesting because, like, hey, you followed Elon Musk, like, big Elon Musk fan, like, hey, let's follow him. Then you went into, like, real estate. Now you're doing marinas. You're doing buying businesses. And I love going back to, like, the very beginning of their, like, first deal, like you did, because you kind of didn't really know what you were really doing. But did you have an, like, idea, like, when you bought that very first house and you said it was Deep Creek,
Ocean Lakes.
Ocean Lakes. What was your like idea going into it? Hey, I'm gonna do long-term rental.
It's funny because I wasn't even that excited about it, and our real estate agent at the time, he's like, "Congrats, it's your first house." And it was a big thing at 21 years old, you know, getting our first house. And it was a couple weeks before it turned 21, and I was like, yeah, no big deal. And like, we're house shopping, and I kept telling Chelsea, I'm like, I don't care as long as you're happy, as long as you're happy. Like, this is gonna be a rental. Like, it's not my dream house. It's not a forever home. Like, we won't be here long. And that was the mindset I had. And she almost got upset with me because I wasn't as excited as she wanted me to be. And and I was like, you know what? Our mortgage is this. We know we can rent it for that, and that's all I cared about. And I didn't know about, you know, CapEx and maintenance and management costs or taxes or anything. And I was like, oh, we got a couple $100 buffer there. We can make something off it. Yeah. And that was a plan. And, we closed on it, and they're all excited. And they're like, hey, yeah, congrats, it's your first house. I'm like, okay, thanks. Like, let's start looking for the next one. Like, see what we could do, you know.
Your wife sounds a lot like mine. Like, mine gets so excited about those things. I just think everything, like, I don't get excited about things. It's transactional. Yeah, whatever. Okay.
And that's what it is. And, like, even so much with cars, too, you know, we've had, you know, Tesla's on Turo since 2017 before it was even a thing. And at the time, we had a Model X on there, super expensive car. But to me, like, it's an asset. And I could only afford it if we rented it out. It didn't make anywhere near enough money for a $1,000 car payment. And, but like, you can't have an emotional attachment to it. Like, this needs to make me money. It might come back in 2 pieces. Yeah. You know, this thing could get ripped in half, and it eventually did. Well, not in half, but I mean, the first 4 feet got it cut off of it. But it's all about, it's just back to rich dad, poor dad, liabilities versus assets, you know, and I wanted to get ahead, and I wasn't going to do that with liabilities. And we've had a lot of nice cars over the years, and I've always made money on every single one, or broke even. Yeah. and I've owned 55 cars in my life. That truck's number 55, and it's getting sold on Friday.
Did you make money through
Every single one.
Oh, really?
Yeah, Chelsea hates it because we're always turning over, getting new cars.
Yeah, because they say cars is like the worst asset to buy.
And so I made the least money on the last Model 3 I just sold last week, and I bought it in May, but we put 11,000 miles on it, and I bought it. It was a great deal at the time. The market was still, used cars crazy high, and the market's tanked the last 2 months. And I saw the market going down. I'm like, hey, we got to sell this. Time to get rid of it. Yeah. And I was getting ready to list it for sale and got like an instant sale. The guy came up 2 days later. But like rough numbers on that, bought it for $46,000, $1,900 in taxes. Turo made me $4,000 on it. So 46 plus 2, 48, minus 4,000 from Turo, down to 44, but I still sold it for 48,000. So
that's what like most people think, like, how in the world does this guy make money on cars? So you did Turo for a little bit, like I was renting out Turo,
Yep.
and then like, okay, well, about to sell it, make profit for then.
Right,
too,
and it doesn't even have to be a lot of money, but as long as I can turn that liability into an asset. And there's some cars that I'll drive for 6 to 9 months, put 10,000 miles on them, and only make $1,000. But it didn't cost me that $800 car payment every month.
Yeah.
It's that's the biggest thing that people don't factor in. That your insurance and your personal property tax, that can kill a deal so quickly. But I have to factor all that in, and sometimes I have a matter of hours to do it.
Yeah.
I run some of the local electric car clubs, and I have it set up to get notifications with every one of those posts, because someone will post and say, hey, my car's coming a month early. I got to sell it this weekend. Here's my trade-in price. If you can beat it, you can get it. I'm like,
yeah.
Holy hell. And there's literally, I remember it was a Thursday afternoon, our daughter was in gymnastics. I was at a brewery, and I'm like, Chelsea, this car just got posted for sale. There's like 6,000 in margins there. They need a quick sale. And she's like, so what are you saying? I'm like, I got to go to Gloucester tonight. She's like, no. I was like, no, seriously, I could sell this thing like so fast. We won't even keep it. Like, I'll barely have time to register to the thing.
Yeah.
And I drove that night. Somebody gave me a ride out to Gloucester, and I had that car sold. And a buddy of mine actually knew, my buddy Julian knew what a good deal it was. And he's like, hey, I know you got a killer deal on that thing. I need a car. He said, I'll give you $5,000 over what you paid for it. And I ended up selling it to him. He got a great deal on a car because it was below market value. I made money on the spread, not for 2 hours worth of work, but
Yeah.
that was one of my best deals. But I've had a couple of them like that. But
So tell me about your transition from like W-2 to like, hey, I'm gonna take this step and just go on business myself. I'm financially free. Like, tell me on that, like your, I guess, conquest to get financially free, and then
yeah.
after
So
that.
I mean, over the years, I've just been crushing as many. So I was a mobile mechanic for 3-4 years, crushing podcasts, audiobooks. I would put them at 1.5 times speed, and I had 14 to 16-hour days. 8 hours of that was driving. My territory was Salem, Roanoke, parts of West Virginia. I'd start my days over that. My Monday would start over there. I'd leave here at 4 a.m. and get out there at 8, 9 a.m. whenever it was.
Yeah.
And the whole time I'm driving, just bigger. I crushed every Bigger Pockets podcast. Originally, when they only had Bigger Pockets.
Yeah.
And I crushed all those in like, I don't know, 9 months. At 1.5 times speed, 8 hours a day. That's all I absorbed.
That's all it.
Most people like hate listening to podcasts that much, but if all I'm doing is cruising and driving, like I can 100%, focus on that information coming in.
Yeah.
But found Bigger Pockets at the time, the FIRE movement, financial independence, retire early. And I was like, and we kind of got a, head start with luck and hustle with the Tesla stock. It's like, hey, if we diversify this, do 20%, down loans on X amount of rental properties. And I only made, full disclosure, I only made like $75,000 a year with Tesla. So I wasn't making $150,000 and needed to supplement that income.
Yeah.
If we got to 75 plus, medical insurance, like we're there, I can afford to quit my job. And that was our goal. It wasn't to be filthy rich. I mean, we had a little 1,800 square foot house off London Bridge. And it's like I just want my time back, that freedom.
Because you bought rentals here, and then you got into like rentals up in like short-term rentals up in Snowshoe. Like, what made you look into like the Snowshoe area for like short-term rentals?
Let's take a step back.
Like
we started. I found Bigger Pockets, found the Burr method, and like, holy shit, this can work. And it's not get rich quick. Like, by the time you've refinanced out of a deal, done all the work, like, cool, that thing's making you $200-300 a month at your higher mortgage if it's a good deal, if you did all your numbers right and it's working out. So do the math, $200 to $300 a door. It takes a long time to get to $70,000 a year.
Yeah.
And so we did. We started doing single family homes here, and I was working probably 60-70 hours a week for Tesla. It slowed down a little. And my spouse was managing the renovation projects. And like, mind you, her background's culinary. Cordon Bleu, running restaurants. He was sous chef at the She worked at Cavalier Golf and Yacht Club, catering. Her background's restaurants.
Yeah.
Never got exposure to construction, rehabbing, real estate, nothing in her entire life. And I'm dragging her into this, and like she reins me in. I'm crazy. I'll throw money at anything that's a good deal. We're going to tour a hemp farm tomorrow to check it out. So she reins me in. I've got to do my due diligence, show her the numbers, and she's like, okay, the risk is worth the reward, kind of thing.
So she's the voice of reason.
Yeah, she plays devil's advocate with everything. Worst case scenario, the sky falls, and like, what's our backup plan, And so she's handling these renovation projects, and then managing the properties afterwards. And like, here I am to her. I'm like, hey, did a couple minutes of homework, learn the Virginia Landlord Tenant Act, because like once you get above a certain amount of rentals, you fall into a different set of rules. Is you're not this tiny little landlord anymore. It's like,
because
hey,
you have
you're
to take
business.
Section 8 and stuff like that. Yeah.
Right. And so we started falling under different guidelines. I'm like, hey, can you learn this stuff and run these properties? And so we just kept kind of stacking it on our plate, and we kept doing single family rentals. And I mean, I started. We've got.
So how do you fund your burr? Because you had to put down money down originally. Where do you get the money?
So in the beginning, we were chipping off just Tesla stock, selling it. Because I got in 2012. 2018, 2019, it was some ridiculous 10, 15,000% returns. Just stupid.
Yeah.
Funny enough, backtrack really quick. That Manhattan technician job that I got offered was with 5,000 shares of Tesla stock because they couldn't afford to pay any hourly pay.
Yeah.
That was before a 3-way stock split, a 5-way stock split. So 15 times 5,000, 65,000 shares. It's at 900 a share right now.
Oh, wow.
It's stupid money. Yeah, stupid me for not taking it. And funny enough, I've met other guys that turned down that same offer.
Yeah.
We all took jobs a year later, but their demand was a whole lot less. So my first set of options were 400 shares. And like, that's turned into a lot of money if I would have kept it all. I mean, but I had no financial literacy at all. I got the shares at $25 a share, and it hit $80 a share. I'm like, holy shit, I've made 3 times my money, Yeah. And we did ESPP, the Employee Stock Purchase Program. You buy it in they lock you in for 6 months. You get the lesser of 2 rates. So a start date and an end date, say it's 25 a share, 75 a share. You get the lower, so the $25 a share minus, I think it was like 20 or 25%. So you're like guaranteed a good return on it.
Yeah.
And even if it tanks, you can still sell at that end of the 6 months. And so that happened. And I remember my first, it's either every 3 or 6 month period. I don't remember, but I remember buying her an engagement ring, and we call it her $500,000 engagement ring. I sold 121 shares at $76 a share. You do the math, at its peak it was $500,000, and I got it for $10,000.
Yeah.
She's still with me, so I guess it was a good investment.
She can tell everyone she's got a $500,000 ring.
Right. But and it's funny because she's not fancy. She's not into jewelry, nothing at all. And like to her, and it was like a carrot at the time, and to me, like that was a lot of money. You know? But anyway. So like, I turned down that initial offer. My next offer was 400 shares. So that stock did turn into a good amount of money. I think it was like a couple $100,000 at the time. And, so we were chipping away at that. And this whole time, like no mentor, no real estate investors in the family. I didn't know anybody that came from those.
Did you use that money to finance the burrs? And
yep. So we were chipping away at those 20% down. I'd sell, $30,000, $40,000 here and there. And it was starting to do a good bit of damage to my stock portfolio.
Yeah.
And I found my mentor organically. I was working on his car in his driveway, and I had a real estate book in my driver's seat. He's like, "Oh, are you into real estate?" And I was like, "I'm trying to be. We've got 3 rentals right now." He's like, "Well, you are into real estate. Own that. Like you are a lot more than most people." And he's like, "Oh, you got 20 minutes? I can give you a few pointers." And I was working on his car on a Saturday, and I already had to convince my spouse, like, "Hey, this guy's stranded. It's a quick disengagement. Like his wall charger's acting up. It's jamming up. His car's stuck in his driveway right now." And the alternative was they would have an electrician come remove the wall charger and tow his car to the service center. Like this should be a 20-minute fix. Like over in on the peninsula. 2-hour time frame, I'll be back. And because like weekends are family. When I'm working 70 hours a week during the week, we started prioritizing family. Initially, I was working weekends, and she's like, "All right, go ahead." And I get there, and he's offering to chat with me about real estate. And I call Chelsea. I'm like, "Hey, I this guy wants to chat with me for 20 minutes. I was like, "You mind?" She's like, "I'm gonna call in 20 minutes. If it's not worth your time, come home." I'm like, "Okay, cool." And she calls it 20 minutes. I ignored her call. She called again like 5 minutes later. I was like, "I've learned more in 30."
She's gonna kill you.
Yeah, right. I learned more in 25 minutes than I have in the last like couple years.
Yeah.
Give me a minute. And like hour and a half later, here he is, and he's like, "I came from nothing. I'm self-made. I like to kind of give a helping hand when I can. If you want to meet, every month or two, keep in touch. I'd happy to, help you out and give you some guidance. I'm like, whoa, okay, this is what a mentor is.
Yeah.
I had no idea. Because before that, it was, YouTube University and books. And I had just recently found Bigger Pockets, which if I'd have found it years prior, it would have been a whole nother animal. I'd have started a lot sooner. But
that's crazy that, like, you had that, like, man, you didn't have to go do that, but it's like, hey, I went and I did this. I'm going to help someone. And that's led to such a great relationship that has, like, catapulted your entire
huge,
career.
life-changing, literally life-changing. I'm going to buy a good amount of real estate from him next year.
Yeah.
He's slowing down and he's diversifying and going to help me out. It's pretty amazing. Literally life-changing stuff. But I was kind of always like that with my jobs. I never stayed at a job that I didn't love.
Yeah.
And I loved every bit of Tesla until it got too big to corporate company and micromanagement. And anyway, we're not going down that rabbit hole. But so yeah, and I told him how I was buying deals, and I'd run deals by him, and he's like, hey, like, how old's that roof? How's that water heater? How old's that HVAC? Like, your CapEx isn't enough. You need to put another 10, 20% into that kind of thing. And so he would hyper-analyze my deals and pick them apart. I'm like, holy shit, I thought this was a good deal. Now it turned into a 8% ROI or 10%, which sounds good for some people, but like I'm going after 20, 30% ROI.
Yeah.
And he found out how I was selling stock to fund the real estate. And he's like, what the hell are you doing? Get a line of credit against it.
Yeah.
What's that? Literally
You're
didn't
paying
know.
taxes when you sold
Literally,
it. Yeah.
every bit of that's a taxable event. So not only would I sell that chunk of money, I'd sell the tax on it, and some of it was capital gains depending on where it was coming from.
Yeah.
And so he told me about a line of credit. I dug into it and like, holy hell, like E-Trade will let me borrow money at 3%. Like, this is crazy. And it was no minimum payment, and there was no term, because you're borrowing it from yourself essentially. Yeah. And they allotted like 35% of your portfolio. And so we started doing that. And, we'd buy a house in, Red Wing for $200,000, put $50,000 into it, 6-9 months later, refinance it for, ARV would be 320, whatever, 300,000.
Yeah.
And then we pull every bit of our renovation money and our down payment money out, and we rolled it to the next one. Like, holy shit! Like, I could have saved a lot of money if I'd just found
you
this
had
mentor
a lot of
earlier.
Tesla stock. You just saved that.
Right. But I mean, it was all good and diversifying and everything. But so I started doing a line of credit, and then out of nowhere, a quad came up, an Ocean View. And Chelsea was already terrified. We bought, I think, 4 houses in 1 year. And she's like, hey, let's slow down. And I remember it was a Friday night, and somebody was like, hey, like, this guy's selling some investment properties. You're interested? I'm like, sure, yeah, let's talk.
Yeah, why not?
Yeah. And he calls me. He's like, hey, I got these properties. I selling them off. I've got 2 people scheduled for this weekend. First come, first serve. I'm like, holy shit, here I'm at a party, drinking. It was late at night. And he says,
show up at his house like 1 a.m. Hey, no, first come, first serve,
literally,
right?
I had to, in order to beat the next guy who was scheduled for like 10, I met him at like 8 a.m. that next morning. And I had to leave my car at this property, or at the party we were at. And I rode my motorcycle to him. It was in the winter too. It was like November, December. And I rode my motorcycle out to meet him, freezing my ass. I'm like, I really hope this is worth it. And that was our first fourplex. And like the numbers worked. And like I had 2 hours to analyze this thing, just doing math in my head. I'm like, rough numbers sound good. Got under a handshake deal, and we got the place. And I called Chelsea on the way home, like, hey, we're buying a fourplex. I'm like, we're what? I'm like, it's okay. Like, you've been doing it with single family. Now it's all under one roof. You've got, one roof for it. Your CapEx is going to be lower. And I was like, it's going to work. She's like, no, we're scaling too fast. And so I sat down and showed her the numbers of what it could do. It's 4 2-bedroom, 1-bath units. She's like, okay, we'll see how this goes. And this was like, in the middle of, right in the beginning of COVID. So it took us like 6 months to kick out 1 unit. One just got leased, and 2 units were like long-term, but like 60-70% of market value. And so like once we got it all up to market value and rented, it would be a cash cow. And she got that stabilized, renovated 1 unit, renovated another, and it's all rented. And like it was probably a week or 2 after it got stabilized. There's a guy that posted on Facebook about a 10 unit, and literally Facebook Hampton Roads Investor Group, Yeah. And I was in every single group with notifications turned on for every single one of them because I wanted to see, and I also wanted to learn how people analyze deals because I was still learning. And it was a 10 unit in Hampton. It was like 5 separate duplexes, and it is like the epitome of a high maintenance property. Like veterans, disabled vets in there, Section 8, like a bunch of recovering vets and everything. And it was a little bit of sentimental to me. And this guy posted on there, is like, hey, we want to keep the systems in place that are here. We want to keep these people here. Send us your story and like why you deserve this property kind of thing. Yeah. And he only owned it for a year, but they got the storage unit bug and we're selling it to 1031 into something else. And I sent him my story, and like there's a history of drugs and everything in my family history, and like everybody's clean now and life's great. But like I saw, halfway houses saved quite a few of my family members, and this wasn't a halfway house, but it was like the step after that while they're on their own, and the VA is paying a good portion of their rent, or they're on Section 8 trying to get back on their feet, and it always been like a bucket list or passion project for me to like, hey, I want to own rehabs or like halfway houses later, but I didn't think they made any money. I was like, once I can afford not to make money, this is what I want to do with it. There's always been a goal, and here it is. And I showed it to Chelsea. I was like, look, we can help these people and still make a little bit of money on it, and she didn't know the legwork that was going to be involved in it. And sorry, but we just got a property management company for it now. So they're taking it off her plate, but it has been 80% of her management time goes to that. And a lot of these people,
so how does that business model work? Like what's a deep dive? How's that work?
So there was,
cause I've never heard of that kind of thing.
So it was VA operated similar to Section 8. They found a tenant and said, hey, here's this guy. And a lot of them, horrible or no credit, bankruptcies, evictions. And here you are taking a risk on this person, hoping they're going to turn things around. So it's kind of as risky as it gets. And and some of it was Section 8 in there from like the community board and stuff. But like some of these people, they lived there 3 years or 10 years. Smoked the whole time. Like these units are just in disrepair, nasty, but these people are going to die there. They're not moving anywhere, zero plans to go anywhere. And they're the nicest of people, and they mean well, but they've got their own story or disabilities or what have you. And we didn't have the heart to kick them out. We could have bought the place and lease ends and kick them out, or say, hey, you're paying $600 a month, here's market rate at $900 a month, this is what we're doing. And we got the place. Like, here we are, we're normal people, we can't afford for you not to pay rent. Like I've got a roommate at my house. That happened along like the fire movement. We got derailed pretty quick. So like we were super close to getting enough income for me to quit Tesla. And we were like, what if we rented out our spare bedroom? And this was right before COVID. And we have a master suite that was upstairs by itself. And we're like, what if we found the right person? We did Airbnb. And so we had one Airbnb renter that was there, and it went okay. And then COVID hit, and nobody knew what the hell was going on. So we're like, oh, let's see if we can find a long-term tenant. We screened a lot of weird people. It was pretty interesting. And we found this lady who keeps to herself, just quiet person, and didn't want to have people over, no parties, doesn't like to cook, didn't need access to the common areas or anything. And had a good stable job, but like credit was terrible from medical bills and everything else. And it's the same thing we're doing with the rest of our real estate, taking a risk on people, trying to help them out. And we rented out our master suite, and me and my spouse, that's the only thing. She said our king bed has to fit in the guest bedroom. And sure enough, like it's this tiny guest bedroom. And
shove it through the door.
Literally. And so we had a king bed in there, like 2 feet, her dresser, 2 feet on the other edge of the bed. And I had like a section of the closet. And we did that for like a year. But that sacrifice, having that the roommate move in, like that allowed me to quit my job 6 months earlier, probably 9 months earlier, and she's still here with us to this day. She's awesome. It's like 1.5 years, 2 years later. She's been amazing. And
so you became financially free, and then you just go off on the beach, just chill on the beach, like.
It was so funny. We even had like a retirement party. It was so stupid. And I was like, oh, Eric retired from his W-2, and like I took a day off. I think it was like a full day. I'm like, what am I going to do with myself? Like, this is terrible. And like, we're living okay, better than most. But like, I still have this like average house, and we're very frugal people. Like, I've always told people I want REI money. We were planning a camping trip for that summer, and I was like, we're going to take like 2 months off this summer and just camp. And we were initially going to tent camp. And I went into REI, like, I'm going to get a good hat, a good jacket, and some good boots, and some good pants. We're going to do a lot of hiking. I need the best. And I walk in there, and I'm at the clearance section looking at a jacket, and it was like $140. And I was like, hey, what's the clearance price on this? And they're like, oh, it's like 40% off. I'm like, oh my gosh. And Chelsea and Riley were with me, and they're picking out hats and stuff. And I said, Chelsea, did you look at the tag on that hat? She's like, no. And she looks at it. She's like, $50? And she's like, let's go now. And Riley's like, I like this hat. We're like, no. She's like, you're going to lose it. It's going to get ruined. We do not have, and she had a $60 hat on, And so we walk out of there, and like my next goal after that was to have REI money. Like,
Yeah.
So we hit the thrift stores and found stuff and made it work. And I mean, we're not materialistic people. Like, we've had fun cars. I'm a car guy, but they've always paid for themselves. So it's not like I'm splurging for this. So like, I mean, most of my clothes are thrift stores. I mean, these shorts are like 8 years old, and I mean, I had times where friends would ask me like, hey, everything okay? Like, your shoes are talking. We thought you were doing okay, but like, your shoes are old. Those are from my wedding from 6 years ago when you bought those Vans. I'm like, shit, you're right. And I go to the Van store, and it's like $60 for Vans. Like, they're not even that comfy. And so I ended up finding some on eBay for like half the price. But so we've never been materialistic people, Chelsea included. Like, she's had 2 purses this year, and like her most expensive one was from Target for like $35 on sale. So we'll spend money on food and travel, and that's our priorities. But the big part with the FIRE movement, there's different ways to do it, and there's, I don't know, 18 different FIRE movements now. But we didn't want to adjust our social life or our lifestyle. We still wanted a vacation. Yeah. Because we could have went to back, living like peasants and not going anywhere, cutting our social life. We're very social people. We go out way too much. Weekend trips to Charlottesville or different beaches or what have you.
Because you sound like at the very beginning it's like head down, just push through it. But now that you're finally free, do you find like a way to find work-life balance, or is that a thing for you?
I schedule every minute of my day.
Or should I ask your wife this question?
I mean, you saw with trying to schedule this. We've been trying to schedule this for 2-3 months.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I schedule about every 15 to every 30 minutes of my day. She let me sleep in this morning till like 8 o'clock. And because our daughter gets on the bus early, and I try and let Chelsea sleep in. She's not a morning person, and I woke up this morning. I had a super long weekend, got like 10 hours of sleep all weekend doing like electric car events and stuff.
Yeah.
And I woke up at like 8:04. I'm like, ugh, what the heck? And I wake up, I'm like, good morning. She's like, and I was like, thanks for letting me sleep in. She's like, oh my God, is the sky falling? And like, we're in crunch time with a few different small businesses right now, an SBA loan, and like I lost an hour of the day, and like it crushed me. This morning I started off on the wrong foot, and because like our goal was like, hey, you're never going to be a workaholic again. And like we went through a rough patch in our relationship 4 or 5 years ago, and like so much of it was stemmed because we weren't friends anymore, you know. And now we're the best we've ever been. We're best friends, and like I'll leave for the weekend and I miss her. And it sounds corny as shit, and like usually you get into like a honeymoon phase where you're like that, but like I don't sleep good without her. Like she like.
So how do y'all do that for like balance? You just like, okay, you schedule like certain, like you said, schedule every 15 minutes or
literally, whether it's a call.
Time,
I started using Calendly. I've got an assistant it was a big stepping stone. I had her part-time. She's transitioning to full-time. She helps me out personally, multiple businesses. She helps run the Turo fleet that we just scaled down. But so much of it is letting go of control and delegating what you can, and honestly a lot of stuff that's prioritizing. I mean, I had to cancel with you once or twice. It's like, dude, sorry, something came up, and like there's times.
Well, it was 1-on-1. You canceled, I canceled.
Oh yeah, okay, cool. I don't feel
so
as bad. But so much of it is prioritizing, and it's like your friends want to go out and rage on a Friday night, and like, and at the time,
so like, you should ask me 6 years ago, 7 years ago.
Right, yeah, exactly. When I was out raging every weekend, but like we go out and party like rock stars like once or twice a year to where I can afford a 24-hour hangover afterwards. Like I just can't do it anymore. And we'll vacation a lot, but it's like when our daughter goes to summer camp, like we're going to we went to Mexico for a week and Puerto Rico for 2 weeks, but it's like, hey, she's hanging out with grandma for this week and in summer camp for these 2 weeks. So we're very diligent with that time. But right now my work day is daughter gets on the bus at 7:30, gets off the bus at 4 o'clock, and I'm expected to be home by 4 o'clock. And like there's times where it's like it's not that I'm asking for permission, but like, hey, heads up, I tried everything I could do. This boat tenant can't meet before 4. I've got to be over there at Norfolk at 4:30. And she's like, okay, cool. And it's just a respect thing, just running it by her, making sure she's aware. I did everything I could, but here's this meeting at 7 o'clock at night, whatever it is. I just trying to keep those to a minimum, and she knows I'm trying, and that's what matters.
8 a.m. in the morning, but I got to close this deal.
Right, yeah, exactly. That's what it turns into, but it's so much about just that balance and that juggling act. My mentor says like you're juggling everything in life, from friends, family, business is your health, self-care, and like some of those are rubber and they'll bounce back. Your friends are always going to be there. If they're good friends, they understand. And that one time you hit them up, hey, I've got a night out, let's go. They're like, cool, thanks. I haven't heard from you in 2 months, but let's go hang out kind of thing. But
so do you have like a list? Like I kind of almost have a list that's like, hey, here's number 1, here's number 2, here's number 3, and then a priority list. And then like, I might not even be able to get time for any of
So that's what happens. So we use Keep Notes, and I've got 15, 20 different lists. And it's like, hey, this is like, here's my bucket list. Here's like my goals. Here's my to-do list. Here's mine and Chelsea's to-do list. And here's 4 different lists for different businesses of things we need to prioritize. But like when I retired, it's like I love talking to people. You can ask anybody that knows me. It's like, oh shit, he can talk. I get trapped in conversation so much. Literally, when I was a mobile tech, I would allocate 20 to 30 minutes with every single appointment just to talk with them. But a lot of it was like, not interrogation, but like research and interviews.
Yeah.
And like I'd see some of these people.
Find the
like,
information.
So I would Google. I had some pretty embarrassing times at Tesla marketing events where I would turn down test drives to the wrong people. And I'm not into politics. I'm not into celebrities. Like my mindset is I only have so much room in my brain. I'm not spending time memorizing stars, celebrities, or anything. Like
Donald Trump asked me to ride a Tesla car, but I told him no, I didn't know who he was.
Close. I turned down Tony Blair, who's an old prime minister in the UK. I was at a marketing event in LA, and he's like, hey, can you squeeze me in on the list next? And I was like, sorry, like we're full for test drives right now. And this is like 2012, like Model S was like hot stuff, and we're at this marketing event that I should have known. It was a fundraiser of who's who in LA kind of thing. And he's like, oh, can you see if you can squeeze me in? I'm like, I'll try, I've got a hard no right now. He's like, oh, whoever's running the event, tell him Tony Blair wants to get a few minute ride. And I go ask the event manager, like this guy's the event manager for a reason. He's into politics, and he knows who's who of LA kind of thing. He's a sales manager there. And I was like, hey, some guy named Tony Blair like wants a ride. And he's like, the Tony Blair? I was like, yeah. He's like, I heard he was coming to this event. And I was like, who the hell is this guy? Like, I said, we don't have room. We've already made one exception. He's like, you see those 2 guys with him? I was like, yeah. He's like, those are his guards. Or he told me, he's like, those are his guards.
So you didn't see them strapped over there?
And I look, I'm like, holy hell. He's like, that's the car he's riding in, and 2 more guards over there. What is this? He's like, go Google him. I'll take care of this. I go Google him, and I literally like facepalm myself. I'm like, oh, I'm such an idiot. And so ever since that day, I have Googled every single Tesla owner I've met. Because at one point, we're dealing with like the 1% of who's who. Our cheap cars were $90,000 back then. I say their cars were $90,000 back then. And so I'd Google everybody. And, some people you'd find a lot, and, it's family money, and I don't have much interest in interviewing those people. But when I find a guy who either you can't find anything on him because he's good at hiding what he does, and I'll look him up on Facebook, LinkedIn, Instagram, and some of these guys, like, they don't list anything they do.
All that oil money?
Yeah, right. Or like just family generational wealth. I mean, I remember being out in Charlottesville, and I pulled up to a guy's gate, and they told me go to the second gate. And it's like literally like where the help go, or where like the workers go. And this guy had an estate, and I pull up there, and like I get to the house, and I call his property manager, and I was like, hey, I'm here, can you open the garage for me? And like I dealt with that a lot. I dealt with a lot of who's who, and he's like, no, I'm outside, I don't see you. I was like, I'm next to, there's a 2-car garage and a 1-car attached garage, there's a fountain. He's like, oh, that's the guest house, keep going. I'm like, what? Go over this hill, and there's this 10,000 square foot house. Yeah. And like there's the soccer field and the stable and the polo field. I'm like, Jesus Christ, like, okay.
Nothing makes you feel like you're broke is like that, right?
No. I'm like, I remember going to school in Jersey and like literally picking which bill to pay. And like I lived in the ghetto in Jersey, and like Newark and Elizabeth, and like I literally would tape up my windows because I didn't have money to fix them after they got busted. I started leaving my car unlocked because I literally couldn't afford to fix the fucking windows. Yeah. It was bad. And like Chelsea was working in San Diego, sending me money literally for groceries. I remember treating myself, and I worked at a Subway sandwich place, and AJ, to this day, man, he used to yell at me because I would take sandwiches home with me. But like it would be my dinner and breakfast the next morning, and I had to do that because I couldn't afford to eat, and I lived off top ramen and cup of noodles and SpaghettiOs, and I would sell sandwiches. Like he'd say, oh, this bread's going to be bad tomorrow, take it, and I would make 3-4 sandwiches and sell them to the students the next day. I was at the BMW STEP program, and everybody knew me as the sandwich guy. And I started bringing 2 backpacks, one full of sandwiches and one full of my schoolwork.
So one thing I was always kind of curious about, because most people, like the average real estate investor, is like, okay, we do long-term rentals, you do short-term rentals, you might do mid-term rentals. But all you kind of like you're getting into like marinas now, like you're getting into.
So hold on, we got up to 20 doors of all long-term rentals.
Yeah.
It was like 5 single-family homes, a townhouse that I found from Facebook, literally real estate investors group. This lady reaches out to me, says, "Hey, you seem like a good dude. You give a lot of advice here. You're very humble. Are you interested in our townhouse? I need to get out. All I want is the loan paid off. We fell into being landlords, and we're not cut out for it. This just isn't working. We've been through 2 crappy property management companies." And I look at the deal. I'm like, wait, it doesn't need repairs. You're renting it for under market value, and it's instant equity. Like, sure, we'll take it. And to this day, it's still up in near Fort Eustis, awesome townhouse, and it's funny. It's nicer than my house. But
She just wanted to get rid of it.
that's it. And so we got 5 single family homes, a townhouse, the 4-plex, and the 10 unit. And, you know, we're scaling slowly, and my mentor's like, hey, look at, you know, bigger stuff, bit higher ROIs. Like, single family, like, builds wealth, but it's not the highest cash flowing.
Yeah.
And I started looking at midterm rentals and short-term rentals, and I was looking around, you know, Norfolk and everything, and we have, I don't know, morals, for lack of a better word, and we're in a housing crisis, and I don't want to take away affordable housing in an area. You know, we've got that 4-plex in Ocean View. It's a block from the water, and to this day, all 4 long-term rentals, I could turn all 4 of those into Airbnbs and probably triple to quadruple our ROI. But the people there are good, hardworking people, and I don't have the heart to kick them out. You know, and we've talked about, you know, once someone leaves, transitioning it, but like even to this day, we're still not. And thankfully, it's to the point now where we don't need that additional ROI, and we can afford to not kick them out. But I started looking at destinations, and I had a friend, Austin, who was just absolutely killing it in snowshoe rentals. And I literally paid a dozen hosts probably, and I'd book their property, inquire, and say, hey, $100 for your time. I'd love to chat with you. I need all the nitty gritty, your P&Ls, your ROI, vacancy numbers, every bit of it. Any chance you're available to chat. And I interviewed, you know, people, Smith Mountain Lake, Gaston, Outer Banks, Sandbridge, Wintergreen, Massanutten, and Snowshoe. And my buddy Austin, and he's going to hate me that I'm telling everybody how good it is out there. But like literally 40-50% cash on cash returns. Like,
oh, wow.
That's money that's usually illegal. That just doesn't happen.
Yeah.
And he showed me his books. He's got stuff on YouTube. Check out his YouTube channel. And I scrutinized it. I showed it to Chelsea. She's like, okay. She's like, I don't want to deal with this one, but if you want to do it, go for it. I'm like, okay, cool. And like all the numbers made sense. Got an awesome 3-bedroom condo there for $135,000. I underestimated the build out for it. And like, think about how much stuff you move, but think about buying all of that at one time for a 3-bedroom and completely furnishing it.
Yeah, that's
it's a lot of work. And I planned, like, the first weekend I went up there. It was by myself, and I had the Jeep and the trailer full of stuff, and drove out there. And I'm like, wait, I only allotted 3 days for this, and I've got to put together 3 bedrooms worth of Wayfair, IKEA, and Amazon furniture. Like, absolutely terrible. And I probably got 10 hours of sleep that weekend just putting together furniture, and I still wasn't even close to done. I was probably 25% done.
Yeah.
I'm like, what the hell am I doing? And so I made a Facebook post like, hey, need some help assembling furniture. It's literally the worst work you can do. You're going to do bedrooms of IKEA furniture. I found some rock star people out there. I'm paying them $20 an hour, which is a lot of money out there, but you get good, you get what you pay for.
Yeah.
And they're absolutely crushing it. I went out the next weekend again, and meanwhile, this is taking our family time away because I'm out at Snowshoe. She's like, hey, how much more time? And like, it's hard to quantify and express how much time that takes for the build out.
Oh, yeah.
And like some of that, it takes different personalities to set that up. It takes a woman's touch to set up a kitchen right. I don't know where the hell I should put everything, what's optimal, and like we've got to the point now where we paid people to set up our third one, which is amazing. Everything shipped straight to them and did it. But I mean, this first unit I got, just to break down the deal, purchase price $135,000, 25% down, DSCR loan, so like quick and dirty loan, adjustable interest rate, and I got it in October of last year. I went up probably 4 different weekends getting the place set up by myself. The last weekend there, I had hired hands and they were helping me. We got it finished, and like it would be easier if I was okay with like mediocrity, because so many Airbnbs are garbage.
Oh yeah,
furniture that's 10 years old,
yeah,
old
bad.
Appliances, and like I cleared that whole place out. It was cool though because I was able to help people. Snowshoe's got like a Facebook yard sale page, and like I ended up meeting the right people, and it's like, hey, take it, make sure it goes to a good home, free, just get rid of it. I probably could have made a couple $100, maybe a couple thousand selling it, but like I'm selling a fridge that's 10 years old. Like I'm not gonna waste the time. It sit on the market for 2 extra weeks and try and make $100 off it. Like time was money. I had to get all that out of there.
Yeah.
And so literally gave everything away for free to a lot of like struggling, hustling people out there that are trying to make ends meet, and here I am replacing their fridge, or they're getting mattresses. And to me, these mattresses were like 6 to 8 years old, and they've got a mattress that's a 15-year-old spring mattress poking out through. So literally gave it all away. Met some freaking awesome people. So we replaced literally everything, appliances, the whole 9 yards. And I go over the top so much so that like I stock it with food, like frozen pizzas, SpaghettiOs, spaghetti, mac and cheese, all that stuff. Because like Snowshoe, you get there in the middle of the night, there's nothing open. The gas station's probably closed, and I've been there before, and it's happened to me actually multiple times. You think I learned my lesson? We went out scouting once, and I went with my buddy Eli and Julian, and we ended up eating dinner from a vending machine, and the soda machine wasn't working, so it wasn't even cold. And I to this day I remember it had a Pop-Tart and a warm Coke, and all of us that was our dinner. We just ate chips and junk food. It was terrible.
I'm not a good person. I get really hungry.
Right, exactly. And here I am trying to be productive and crush it with work, and so one time I went up there by myself. It was a Sunday night. It was like 9 o'clock at night. I'm like, oh crap, I gotta go eat dinner. I forgot. I had no food there yet. I was still in the weeds. And literally my hallway outside of the unit, it was just boxes, trash boxes from Amazon, Wayfair, everything. And I was like, I'm gonna be a jerk for leaving this here, but I've got to go get food. The restaurant closes at 9 or whatever it was. And they closed early because they were short staffed. And I was asking random people, mind you, this is off season. This is October. It's like a ghost town. And I'd see somebody like, hey, is there any restaurants open? They're like, no, where are you from?
You're not from here.
Right, exactly. Like, this is my third time here. Where can I eat? They're like, oh, you can check the gas station at the bottom of the mountain. I'm like, cool, like 15-minute drive, no big deal. I get there at 10:05.
And it closed at 10.
It closed at 10. I'm like, what am I going to do? Literally no food. All I've got is tap water to drink. And like I got like a 12-pack of beer on the way up. Hey, just to finish that quick story, I came back and I had mac and cheese. I had no milk and no butter. And I was like, this can work. I can still eat this. And I cooked in a pot that had a plastic lining in it to protect it. And I had 1 box of mac and cheese. And like, that's just what I brought from my house,
Yeah.
And then I go to look at it, and there's like an old joke that like I screwed up mac and cheese once. I made mac and cheese soup because I put everything in it once when I was, I don't know, probably, my daughter was like 2, and I ruined mac and cheese, and Chelsea tells everybody that story. And I ruined mac and cheese again because there was a plastic liner in that pot, and I didn't pull it out. And so I opened the pot, and there's like plastic on the top of this thing, melted plastic. I'm like, I just ruined the only meal I had. So anyway, I ended up posting on the Snowshoe Facebook group, and somebody gave me a box of mac and cheese. It was the coolest thing. There's other owners that live there, and they're like, hey, do you need something? I was like, literally anything. I'm not picky. Like, you give me some crackers right now.
They've had that situation where they've suffered there too.
I don't know if they have, but they were more prepared than I am. They're like, yeah, what do you want? I was like, literally, SpaghettiOs, mac and cheese, I'm happy. And they're like, yeah, do you need anything else? Like, no, it's fine. They're like, do you need butter? I'm like, no, I'll make it work. Like, I don't even need that,
Or even the Pop-Tart and Coke.
Yeah, right. That would have been better than the tap water. That and the Bud Light. So anyway, learned a lot of lessons from that. I cherry-picked a lot from what Austin was doing. He's got a ton of content on his YouTube, different software he used.
Yeah.
I automated a lot of it and did a few things different. We got a second and a third unit out there, and my assistant handled 90% of the workload. And like, don't get me wrong, I had to pay her for it, but it was at a time when I had more time than money, for lack of a better words, and she crushed it. Because like when you buy a lamp for this place, like if you're getting 3 to 6 of them, you need to make sure it's a good lamp.
Yeah.
And so you're pricing Wayfair, Amazon. So there's a lot of legwork that goes into building that out. So anyway, we got those 3 units, and I'm meeting, networking people, all kind of business endeavors. At one point, we had 1,500 acres of land under contract for like a hemp and solar farm. And like, I'm kind of a hippie at heart, and come to find out there is nonprofits out there set up to fight solar on agriculture land. They think it needs to be on like rooftops and parking lots and that sort of thing. And like, here it was, empty land that wasn't getting used at all, and we were going to put hemp on it. We offered to donate money to like the Boys and Girls Club, and like we offered to donate a good portion of our proceeds.
So what's the return on something like that? Like, if you're going to go buy land and put solar on it, like how? Like,
it's really good. I still want to pursue that, so I don't want to tell everybody about it. It's really good, but there's like, you're buying property at $1,000 to $2,000 an acre. A lot of these massive solar companies, they're not going to talk to you unless you've got a couple hundred acres. So the barrier to entry is huge. It takes a couple years to break ground and start getting paychecks from it. And I mean, just quick math, we were under contract for a property at $1,000 an acre, and once it's all these bugs, once it's going, you're getting paid $600 to $1,000 an acre. So the money can be really good, but you've got to have the upfront capital. Banks are terrified of a solar and hemp farm.
Yeah.
We made, and I wasted hours upon hours and meetings upon meetings trying to lock one of these into place. And and none of it happened, or none of it really came to fruition. We spent tens of thousands of dollars trying to get it to come to fruition, and it never worked out. We ended up abandoning that, and I met my current business partner, and she found this property that we're at right now, and she's like, hey, you're the only one as crazy as I am. What do you think about houseboats here? Like, cool, let's do it. And you look at the numbers of those, it's like we can Airbnb it, or provide affordable housing, because you can get these houseboats at the time for $40,000-$50,000 for a decent little studio, little kitchenette.
And that's here, right?
That was the goal. Yeah. City of Norfolk didn't want us providing more affordable housing because it didn't fit into their little guidelines, and funny enough,
and I mean, clearly it's worked, because we're like sitting here, we're not sitting as some random people are.
So we went door knocking all over. I went to every single marina looking for houseboats, and I bumped into someone who had boat rentals, and I saw the ROI and the returns from boat rentals, and it's like, wait, a slip will make us $200 to $300 a month. A houseboat, our goal was to make a couple thousand a month, but at a $50,000 purchase up front. And then you look at boat rentals, like, wait, I could rent this out for $100 to $200 an hour for a $30,000 to $50,000 boat. ROI is way better than a houseboat. Or
so what made you
rental.
try to learn something new? Most people are like, oh, just stick what you know, stick what you know, stick what you know. You're already doing so good. It's like, hey, I'm itching for more punishment. Let me go relearn something completely different and try to make that work.
I mean, everyone thought I was crazy when I was looking into the hemp stuff. And it's like, if the numbers work, I can learn anything. And my motto has always been, someone dumber than me has accomplished this. And I'm like, I'm not I don't have a high IQ. I'm not like a smart guy. I'm riskier than most.
Yeah.
I had, a gambling addiction at one point and did okay for the most part. But granted, I was in high school, but still.
Yeah.
But that's where Chelsea reins me in. You know? And it got to a point, she's like, hey, no more, or we're breaking up, kind of thing.
Yeah.
And so like, it's being willing to take that risk. It's the entrepreneur side of things. Like, you jump off and you build the parachute on the way down and you just figure shit out. And that's kind of how I've always been. To this day, I'm still taking community college classes to learn stuff.
Yeah.
But it's funny, like, I'm going to go take a entrepreneurship and a business class just to learn, the basics. Cause like, we're getting loans for some of this stuff. And it's like, it's like, we need a pro forma from you. What's a pro forma? I'm Googling it, looking it up. I'm like, dude, I can't do this. I've never used Excel in my life.
Yeah.
I'm not a spreadsheet guy. I'm a, nose to the grindstone and get it done. I'm not sitting behind a laptop, doing tables and all this stuff. And so I literally went to, it's not Thumbtack. I hired somebody with a master's degree, Fiverr. No, what's the one where you hire people? You outsource jobs.
Oh, damn.
I don't know. Anyway, I hired this guy who's got a master's in it, and it was super cool though. This was like a year ago, 6-9 months ago. Ukraine stuff was going on. It was someone displaced from Ukraine, and I put them and their team to work for. Granted, it was only probably a day or two, but like, I'm paying them $20 an hour to do this, which to me is a killer deal, because I'm not paying some, I don't know, just the cost of living difference, everything. Like, I'm paying this person $20 an hour. They're appreciative. They're getting it at a crucial time. They built this, they probably already had the template for the pro forma, and they sat down with me for a couple hours, explained how to use it, adjust it, manipulate certain things, and I turned it into the bank, and it was good enough. It was for this property. But so, I didn't know how to do any of that stuff.
So you became financially free, but then seems like you during your financial freedom you got less time. So how have you tried to buy back time to kind of free up when you're all about time as freedom, but you don't really have much freedom. So how do you buy back more time? What have you been kind of doing to help buy back more time?
So right now I only work probably 35 hours a week, and it's a struggle. And then don't get me wrong, if I wake up. If I don't fall asleep, I'll let Chelsea fall asleep, and then I'll crush 2, 3, 4 hours worth of work. It's awesome. That's my most productive time.
Yeah.
And I always knew as a kid I had something going on with me, and I've got ADHD really bad. And it wasn't until I became self-employed that I realized how bad it was. I'd go through an 8-hour day in my office, isolated, with a to-do list. I would start everything and not get a single thing done. Something's wrong with me. And Chelsea would yell at me all the time. What's priority? Why are you working on that right now? I was like, sorry. And my assistant keeps me on track. They keep me on track, and my schedule does. But I had to learn how to get better at my time, managing it, delegating. I mean, it killed me. I did landscaping for years growing up, and I had to pay to get the grass cut because I wouldn't find time for it. And it'd be, I'll get it done. And it's a week and a half goes by, and the grass is a foot tall. I'm getting cited by the city. I'm like, God, I'm gonna get to it. And so Chelsea's like, oh, I got the grass cut. I'm like, ugh, okay. She paid $50 and got it cut, but it crushed me because I was like, I've got to start letting this stuff go, you know? I was pretty excited though. I cut it last week and spent 3 hours, put it on an audiobook and like just crushed it. Looked great.
So I heard someone tell me one time, I think it was one of my past guests, he said that he's read over 2,000 books, but he's only actually ever finished 2 because he would get to a point like he would read one and he's like, I go implement that right now. And that's what he's saying. He said, okay, well, he's like a man of action. He's like, boom. I'm like, oh crap, I gotta do this right now. Drop the book. Let's go.
I'm in progress on 4 different books right now.
Yeah.
And the only time I finish them is if it's an audiobook. I mean, I drove for 6 hours this weekend. I crushed like 9 to 10 hours of audiobooks. It was awesome. But I've probably got a dozen books on my shelf right now that I didn't read. And I finished one this weekend. And I told my assistant, I'm like, oh man, I just crushed this. Like, we got to check out this book. It was Traction.
Yeah.
And she's like,
I've heard that book's really good.
Yeah. And Sean told me about it 2 months ago, and it's been sitting on my shelf since. I bought it right away that night when he told me about it, and he's like, you guys need to read this book.
Because it helps you frame out your business, right?
That's it, and just organizing it, getting it. And once you start scaling, like, you've got to let some of that stuff go. And so I started paying to get my car washed. I started paying to get the grass cut, get the house cleaned, because like it's not just the financials or the business side of things, it's a home side of things too. I'm piling stuff on Chelsea's plate. She used to keep our home under lock and key. Stuff was taken care of. She did the stay-at-home mom thing for a little bit, but even then I was always working more than her. And it got to the point, she's like, you're supposed to be helping me with laundry, like you don't have time for this. I'm like, okay, what can we do? And so like we get our house cleaned like once a week now and pay to get the grass cut, and so like that frees up time. But it's just delegating and letting a lot of that go. And my mentor helped with a lot of it. He's like, what do you value your time at? I'm like, about $50 an hour. He's like, that's way too low. I'm like, no, really, it's not worth that much. And he's like, if you put time into something right now, growing a business, buying a big multifamily deal, and you spend 10 hours and that deal makes you $1 million in 4 years, what was those couple hours worth? I'm like, whoa. And he's like, you need this ridiculous hourly rate, and you shouldn't do anything below that. With regardless of what it is. If I can delegate anything, you need to. And it's still a difficult concept for me, because for me to spend $100 an hour to pay someone to do something, it's like, man, that's a lot of money. Yeah. So it's still a struggle, but I've gotten a lot better at it, and so just delegating as much as possible. And
because time flies so fast. Definitely like having kids, it's like that really makes it seem like, because I had my daughter was born like last year, and time has flown so by. I was like, dang, where did all this go?
And it's about to get fun. It's like 0 to 1 years old, like cool. It's just like this little, I don't know, loaf of bread that's super fragile that you can't expose to the elements. My daughter's 8 right now. We go to the adventure park. I mean, we were cliff diving in the Ozarks. We were snorkeling in Hawaii, or not Hawaii. We were on a cruise and we went snorkeling, and we were out there for 2-3 hours. And this girl's in better shape than me. Like she's a beast, man.
Well, my daughter's a year and a half. I'm pretty sure she's in better shape than me too. So.
Yeah. And so this whole time, like, she's working with us on these properties. So the first few, we were doing all the work ourselves, and she's out here like raking leaves, pulling weeds, construction cleanup, and she's like, why are we doing this? Like, Daddy's gonna quit his job. And like, that's how I motivated her. Like, we get enough of these, we get enough rentals, like Daddy's gonna spend more time with you.
Yeah.
And she calls me out every couple weeks.
Yeah.
She's like, oh yeah, because you quit your job to spend more time with me, and it hurts me. It's like, God, what can I do to spend more time with her this week? I'm getting choked up just talking about it.
Yeah. Because I mean, they don't know that stuff. All they know is like, hey, if you're there, you're not there.
And that's all that matters. It doesn't matter that she just signed up. She's going to Cape Henry now. That is more than my mortgage. And I never thought we'd put her in a private school. And we struggled with a couple of different public schools, and she needs a little more attention. Like, I was not the best student for multiple reasons. And it was bad. And like, I feel like if I don't mold her, and not mold, but sculpt her and guide her with the right resources, I don't think I had a very troubled childhood, and addictions, and was a klepto for a while, and growing up, and like, I need to make sure she stays on the right path, and this is probably the best path for her. So we made the decision for her to go to private school. But like, if you'd have told me 10, even 5 years ago, hey, your daughter's going to private school, like, no way, I can't afford that. And so like, we're making certain sacrifices to make that happen. But it's this juggle between like her growing up privileged, but her appreciating what she has, And I mean, I just sold the Tesla, and she's like, wait, we're not gonna have a Tesla? Because we always have them, because I'm rotating through them. She's like, we're not gonna be able to pick our own music. I'm like, oh, God.
It can't drive itself.
Right. She's like, how are we gonna do car karaoke? Like, God, like, this is what she's worried about. And it's just like, and like, she is privileged, but like, we still have to keep her down to grassroots of what she needs to appreciate her stuff. And we do beach and trail cleanups. We go pick up trash. When we go on bike rides, she picks up trash, and like, we still make her work for stuff. I mean, Chelsea just went and bought her like her first pair of brand new shoes, because usually it's hand-me-downs. and like it killed Chelsea because they were like $30 or $40. But like, so she's like, her and Chelsea kind of what motivates me right now to try and get as much freedom as I can, just to spend time with them, whether it's vacations or, you know, just being able to have real passive income, because we don't, when you get businesses, you don't have that. You know, we partnered with a lady, Dacia, who was doing she was working out of her house, making plant-based meat. And like, I care about the environment, I care about the animals, but like, I didn't know any vegetarians or vegans, you know, and we were trying to cut back and do our part, and we were in like this transition phase. And I think I met her at a farmer's market. We became Facebook friends, and we ended up investing in her business, and we helped, you know, deal with the headache of contractors and stuff in the beginning and build this brick and mortar. But she crushes it day to day so well that I can, for lack of a better words, neglect the business, because she's freaking on top of things. Like, I helped her a little bit with startup capital to build the place, but it's her and the team there that is absolutely crushing it. But it's Honest Pastures off Great Neck for anybody. But like, we've had double-digit growth almost every month, and I just got a little bit more involved in help open next door, and even then I fell short of stuff that I promised her, and I feel bad. But like, my goal is to get enough time to focus on these things, and it's a struggle right now because we've got so many projects in the pipeline. This marina, boat rentals, another marina,
Little Gym.
We're buying the kids' little gyms. We're supposed to close in a week and a half. It's crunch time. We've been getting this SBA loan for, and like, everybody's always told me, hey, it's a lot of paperwork for an SBA loan, but sometimes it's worth it. And if you'd have told me how much time I'm going to spend on this SBA loan, I would have taken an extra 2% and a half-year amortization schedule and an extra 15% down, because I just didn't have the time to put into this SBA loan. And like, it's me at 9, 10 o'clock at night sending over documents to the loan officer, dealing with, you know, the insurance and everything else. And it's just, they want so much of your life documented. And
because I guess the first couple of years most businesses fail, so they want like,
and that's what it is. Like, you're showing your projections and you're getting the P&Ls, and they're hyper analyzing every bit of it,
and you're learning everything from the beginning.
Right. And I've learned a lot about you know, how to go about things, but I didn't anticipate how much time it was going to take for it. And these are already operating businesses that are like doing well. The owners are just retiring, and we got the opportunity, and I'm partnering with a family friend that I've known since I was 5 years old. And I mean, it's literally life-changing money. But there's other side of, you know, just kids' health and getting them active, and I always look for ways to give back. You know, Honest Pastures, as soon as it's profitable, we're going to be supporting animal shelters. You know, and like with this kids stuff, the little gym. At one point they had foster kids in there, and they'd let them come for free, you know. Or if someone was falling behind on payments, hey, I got to cancel our membership, we can't afford it. They took care of those people. Hey, let's revisit this in 3 months. Get back on your feet. But your kid needs this. They look forward to it every week. And so we're going to build this business up and bring all that right back in. And I'm pretty excited. And like, the businesses are doing good, and we're going to tweak some things, and we're going to make less money than what we could, but the staff's going to, you know, get better pay, and we're going to do tuitions assistance for college, and bring in more staff to have more classes available to try and make it available to other people. And then it comes with the territory rights to the south side. So I'm already eyeballing a location in Norfolk, and I told Chelsea Friday I was driving around. I had like 20 minutes to kill, and like, I was, of course, on the phone making it productive, but I found this property in Norfolk, and I'm like, hey, Chelsea, I found the next location for Little Gym. She's like, don't start, not right now. And I was like, okay, let me know. Hopefully it's still there.
So for like a business like that, do you buying the rights to the franchise in this specific area, and you can open as many as you want, or like?
So they'll probably limit how many can be open in that area, because that has to make sense from like a statistics and like population, so to speak, because you have to have enough people to support that have enough disposable
you can't have one every like couple miles.
Right. But the south side can support at least another one, and there's nothing on the peninsula. And they generate a good amount of money, and our business partners, you know, regular W-2 employees, and I've asked them probably 2 or 3 times now, like, hey, when's your husband going to quit his job? He's like, what do you mean? I was like, have you guys thought about that? Like, the money this is going to make, it's going to surpass his income next year. And they're like, it's like hard for them to fathom, you know. They weren't entrepreneurs, they weren't anything. She worked part-time at the Little Gym, and she brought it to my attention, like, hey, interested in buying this? And it's funny because Chelsea overheard the conversation, and I was in the middle of doing hemp and solar stuff, and I think talking about this marina at the same time. And she's like, no, you've got enough on your plate, not right now. And I was like, well, I think it's worth chatting about. And Chelsea just walks out the room, pissed at me. And
well, it sounds like you need a COO.
I mean, we do, but we're to the point now. Once all these businesses in our pipeline come to fruition in the next year or two, like, I don't need to keep scaling. I don't need to keep growing. Like, I don't need to make $1 million a year. You know, I really don't. I grew up relatively poor. I mean, up until probably grade school, I was sleeping on a mattress on the floor in between my sister's beds. You know, I don't need a yacht. I mean, don't get me wrong, I'm probably going to get one day, but I don't need that.
Well, you might as well. You got the marina for it.
And so that was the thing. Like, I didn't even know people. When I grew up, I didn't know people with a boat. I remember my neighbors got a boat. Like, man, they got money. Like, that's impressive, you know? And, like, my goal was to always own a boat and not have to rent it out because they're expensive. And, like, here we are. We've got, like, 4 or 5 boats on the way. We'll have a dozen by the end of next year. Jet skis. And, like, I've ridden on a jet ski twice in my life, and it's always been other people's or friends or anything, because like we've never had that disposable income, you know. And now we're turning all of these what used to be liabilities into assets and renting them out. But even with this, there's still a give back to, you know, the community or the planet, if you will. We're partnering with shouldn't announce it. We're in talks to chat with a nonprofit that we're gonna do oyster castles and help build up the waterways here, and because electric boats are still kind of on the leading edge, you know. It's like where Tesla was in 2012. Like, hey, it's expensive. They're not as good as gas boats, but here it is. And as long as the money works for us, like on the financial ROI side of things, like I'm going to be a part of that early adopters curve, you know. There's one group.
I always heard the best boat to be on is someone else's because it's so much expenses with it.
It is, man, and it's crazy. But it's, you know, it's interesting. We interviewed probably 15 different boat rental companies and looked at their numbers and like paying for these people's time. And my assistant interviewed a bunch of them, and you know, looking at their numbers, like 20 to 40% of their gross revenue goes towards fuel, maintenance, repairs. And you know, I've talked to other buddies with boats, and it's like, oh, you know, what do the costs look like for your 30-foot center console? It's like, well, you know, $10,000 in fuel last year, a couple thousand in repairs, and then regular maintenance, winterizing. I'm like, whoa. And like, you don't need any of that for an electric boat. And it's like similar benefits to an electric car. The moving parts of it are close to none, and your maintenance drops to close to nothing. And like these electric boats, and it's funny, my business partner Erin was just in Newport Beach picking up one of our boats. Yeah. And she asked multiple random people at this boat rental company that we're buying boats from. We're buying their used ones. They're refreshing their fleet. She's like, hey, you know, what's the maintenance look like on these? You know, I know there's not a lot, but you know, what maintenance? I'm like, no, there's none. She's like, no, but what do you have to do every now and then once a year? Like, there's none. Yeah. And like they're trying to explain to her, like, hey, there's no maintenance to these things. She's like, no, seals in the engine, you know, like.
So I do not believe you. Right. Just tell me the truth.
Right. And there's different versions of boats. Some of them need, you know, different electric boats. Some need engine seals or something. And they're like, as long as people don't hit stuff, like there's no maintenance. You've got your cleaning and, you know, your detailing, deeper cleaning every now and then. Batteries are, you know, supposed to last 10 years. And here they are. They have these boats that are 5, 8 years old, and they've been running the hell out of them still on original batteries. And so here you are trying to calculate your ROI and your CapEx for these boats and what each boat's ROI is going to turn into. It's like maintenance, none. Like cleaning, you know, 10 minutes. So you kind of factor in what the labor is in between each boat rental, but detailing once or twice a month, bottom cleaning, you know, and like I'm learning boats because of my business partner and a lot of Google and YouTube University, but I wasn't around boats at all. I learned how to tie a couple knots the other day. Like I've been sailing with them. It's been fun. It's learning, and it's the exposure to this world I've never been in. So it's like I'm that rookie that knows nothing. And I mean, just the terms. They have so much terms and jargon that I've never heard in my life. Yeah. But anyway, like we've been figuring out the ROI, and it's going to work. And now we're on a contract for a much bigger marina that needs $2 million worth of work, and we're in due diligence right now to figure out if the juice is worth the squeeze, you know. And it's huge, and it's cool though because we're going to bring life back into it, you know, provide more jobs, and we're going to invest a ton of money and hopefully make some money in a few years. But when you're buying something for $2 million, like you really need to make sure it's a good investment. And me and my business partner, she kind of is like me, diversifying a stock portfolio into real estate and businesses. And you know, they're big boaters, they're sailors, they were liveaboards for a while, sailing around the coast, and so there's an environmental side of it, but there's also like an ROI side of it. Like you can't do it just for fun; it has to make money. And so we're digging through that now, getting estimates, and there's a hell of a lot of work, and there's grants out there and stuff. But like a lot of these grants, like you sometimes need a grant writer. Like there's a whole nother world of stuff
Such
I've
a
never
process.
even dealt with. Yeah, huge, absolutely huge. But like if you fill it out right, you can get that $150,000 dock paid for because they want more transients coming in instead of dumping their nasty water in there. Or if you need showers or bathrooms or what have you. So there's so many aspects to it. But we're doing that and getting these little gyms at the same time, which Chelsea and our business partner are going to do most of once it's going. Mm-hmm. But I've been so involved with the SBA loan stuff, getting the business licenses and all that ahead of time. So there's still a good amount of legwork right now. So it's like juggling that, the time with this and, you know, future endeavors that we have going on.
So Mark Cuban has says that business is the hardest sport in the world. It's 24 hours a day. And so how do you keep, like, it seems like you've done so well. So how do you get your competitive edge? How do you do it other than no sleep, no time?
So I was going to say that, working when other people aren't.
Yeah.
Elon's got a saying, you know, you outwork your competition, you're going to be better than them. You know, how many working hours in the day you're putting in. And I mean, I remember working 90, 100-hour weeks, and that guy would still work more than me. I was at the factory for a couple months, and we saw his car every single day because we lived at the Marriott across the street. And so, like, I've always had that instilled in me. Even when I was a kid, I was working. I started working at 6 years old, and I have just nose to the grindstone, hustling. Like, I wasn't that kid hanging out at summer. Like, I was cutting grass every single day in the summer, and then started working for another landscaping company, like selling concessions at the beach, every bit of it. So I caught the entrepreneurship bug early, and it's just figuring stuff out, problem solving. Like, there's so many people that'll say, oh, I don't know how to do that. I'm like, I'll figure it out. Like, I'm going to Google stuff. I'm going to ask people that are in that circle, whatever it is, you know, just figuring stuff out. But the biggest thing I would say is networking and communication. I've read a dozen books on talking to people. And
like you said, you talk to everyone.
Literally everybody. I remember when I was out at Snowshoe and we were looking for our next unit out there, I brought 25 business cards with me in my pocket that day. And, like, I'm not going out to snowboard and hang out and stuff and, you know, lunch, you know, hang out at the bar and stuff. Every single person, you know, chat with them, whether it's talking about your shirt or your tattoo or, oh, where are you from? Are you renting? You buying here? Oh, no, we're at this unit. Oh, man, I'm looking for units at this condo. You know, here's my card. If you ever hear of anybody, I give a $500 cash referral fee for it. They're like, whoa, they hear that. And it's like, okay, they're going to start looking. Hey, what about this guy? What about that guy?
Yeah.
And networking and communication, I tell people, is the most important thing that most people don't value. And they talk about it, you know, and I'll ask people like, oh, no, you know, we're talking about networking. Like, oh, yeah, you've read, you know, Carnegie's book, How to Win Friends and Influence People. Oh, not yet. Like, wait, what? You're talking about how communication and networking is so important. You haven't even done, like, the basics.
I love that book.
Dude,
that is almost my all-time favorite
I just read it for a second time, and, like, but so many people, a lot smarter than I am, have figured out a lot of this stuff. And I just got to absorb that knowledge and do it. And, like, when I was at Tesla, and I was mentioning when I was in mobile tech, I would interview every single person. Like, hey, if you don't mind me asking, like, how'd you get where you are? And they're like, well, I worked at a car wash one summer. I saw how good it was, and now I own 16 of them. Like, whoa. Yeah. This guy's like a multimillionaire from boring-ass car washes, you know? Like, I could do this. It's not that bad. And I always tried telling Tesla employees that. Like, the networking and the relationships you build from this are worth more than anything else you do here. Benefits are cool. Pay is cool. Like, paying your bills is cool. But, like, the opportunity, just my mentor alone, you know? But I've now got these relationships, and I'm friends with a lot of them. We'll go do lunch, grab beers. I mean, I just spent the weekend with them doing electric car stuff. And just those relationships you build. And so many people don't prioritize that enough. It's interesting.
Because that's what that book always talks about. Because I feel like so many people, even in business specifically, it's like they're all like, oh, what can you do for me? What can you do for me? What can you do for me?
Always.
But it's like that book specifically says, it's like, hey, like, how do I solve this person's problem? How do I make this create like a win-win scenario? Like, and no one actually ever thinks about that. Right.
And, like, to me, just learning the mistakes they've made. I always tell people, like, any industry you get into, real estate investing, Turo, like, literally anything. A lot of people have done it from
gym, marinas.
Literally marinas. Learn from their mistakes, you know. And, like, anybody involved with boating, a lot of them I've talked to by now, like, hey, what do you think about this place? Or what do you think about that? You know, or what would you look out for on this? And I'll get a snippet of information from every one of them. You know, it's a grain of salt, and you know, 75% of it might not be useful, but it's like you learn something new and you take something from each one of those conversations. I just started journaling like a week ago because there's so many times where something happens, like,
you forget
what did that guy tell me, or what was that guy's name? And so, like, during beginning and, like, at the end of the day, I'll take notes, like, oh, met with this guy, he talked about this website, or he mentioned this insurance company, you know. But, like, I mean, I met a guy last week from a Facebook group. I just made a comment saying, oh, I hope the Coast Guard's a little more lenient. We just got a marina. We're starting the process there. I hope they're more lenient. And this guy reaches out. He's like, dude, I saw you bought a marina in Norfolk. You know, which one? I talked to him about it, and I was like, oh, we're going to try electric boat rentals. He's like, oh, let me know if you got time. I do chartering. If you're ever interested in chatting, I can give you some pointers. I went through all that legwork. Like, whoa. And, like, this is a Friday. I had a lot to do.
My man saves me time. I could definitely pitch this to my wife.
Right. And that's what it was. And, like, I told my assistant in the beginning of that day, I said, hey, we're meeting at the marina. We got a lot to get done. Like, our Wi-Fi still isn't working because Verizon is a nightmare to deal with.
Yeah.
But this guy is coming, and he reached out, and he's like, oh, yeah, let's do lunch sometime. I was like, dude, my next week is booked, and I told my spouse,
I got 15 minutes. Can
me and my assistant were supposed to work here and get a lot done and get a punch list together of everything we still need, because my business partner, Erin, she's as busy as I am. And, like, we delegate as much as we can, but stuff still falls through, and we probably don't get stuff done in the order they should, but, like, we're getting it done, but it could be done better. And so we wanted to get a punch list together, and I told my assistant, I'm like, hey, we're probably going to lose this entire day, but this guy's going to give us 2-3 hours of his time, learn as much as we can, and see how we can help him out. And we went to lunch. We went over to Max Barch and chatted with this guy for 2 hours, walked this property for another hour and a half.
Yeah.
And here's this guy with this huge wealth of knowledge. And just, he's, again, self-made. It's funny. His dad's got a good amount of money, huge portfolio, and he's never given him a penny. He made it do it all himself.
Good for him.
Right. And like, that's same with my mentor. Like, military, they got out and they jumped headfirst into entrepreneurship, or whatever sales job or whatever it turned into. But this guy gave us 3 hours of his time. I learned so much from him, and I was like, dude, I need you to come back when my business partner's here in town, and I need to pick your brain for 2-3 hours. If you could give us a crash course on this stuff, let me know what the fee would be. I'm happy to pay for your time. I know it's valuable. He's like, no, dude, like, just this relationship alone is worth it. He said, I'll give you a solid half day. I'm like, whoa, okay.
So I've noticed people with boats when people that have boats, they love talking about their boats.
Yeah, but you know what though? I just to expand on that, anybody that's self-made, they're happy to share it with you. And the guys that haven't, they haven't made it yet, or is generational wealth or whatever, they try to monetize everything, And I was expecting him to say, cool, $150 an hour, like, I'll give you my playbook, or here's this course, go pay.
He's probably like, bro, I have millions of dollars. Like, there's no time you can do
this guy's
that.
still hustling. He's got 3 boats that he's got loans on between here and Florida, and he's still in that startup or that build out phase, but he's just happy to help,
Yeah. I've noticed that a lot with successful people. It's like their ability to help. It's like, hey, I know I can't do this by myself. Hey, how do I help you? You help me, and let's all grow together.
But a lot of it too is paying it forward. Like, my mentor is worth thousands of dollars per hour, and I chat with this guy all the time. And he tells me to pay it forward when I can, and for a little bit I was doing free consulting for real estate investing, Turo, Airbnb stuff, and I got to the point where I set up Calendly and I posted it in a couple of the Airbnb groups or whatever. I'm like, hey, I've only been doing this a year. I interviewed 20 super hosts. Here's my numbers. I'm happy to share what I've learned. But it got to the point where I was doing like electric car stuff, just different avenues of consulting. There was one week that was like 25 to 30 hours of free consulting. I'm like, whoa, I can't afford to do this right now. Like, I've still got goals. I've still got, milestones that I want to hit. I can't do that giving away 25 hours a week. It's just not going to happen. And so thankfully Chelsea reined me in on that and pulled me in. Like, there's a time and place for this, but it's not right now. This is crunch time. You've got to focus on what's priority. And that's part of why it took us a while to do this podcast. It's like, this is 2 hours that's not productive. But like, I was a college dropout mechanic, and like, I've just been winging it with a lot of hustle and, a little bit of luck, you could say, and it works, and so I try to give back when I can, and I still schedule an hour or two of free consulting a week, and I've tried monetizing that a little bit, not to the degree that I want to, but in order for me to validate and make sure it's worth my time, because if I gave it away for free, I'd do it forever. And I tell people like, hey, for electric cars or whatever, it's like, you can go spend 30 hours on the internet and read all kinds of stories from people that don't know what the hell they're talking about. I worked for Tesla for 9 years. I've had 55 cars, and 24 of them being, hybrids or electric. It's of some sort. Like, I can give you an hour of my time for $100, and it should be worth your time. And most of these people are happy to pay it. And I even did a little bit. I experimented with it, and it's like, oh, just pay me what you think it's worth. And there were some times there guys like, oh my God, you saved me from buying this car that I was going to lose my ass on, or that was going to have problems in it. Someone thinking they're saving money buying a $20,000-$30,000 Tesla, and they're paying me a couple $100 for an hour of my time. Like, okay, so there is a way to monetize this, but I still don't have time right now. My time still needs to be focused on these businesses or whatever our ventures are right now. But hopefully a year from now, I can do more of that giving back and helping people, or finding. So once we build and finish the businesses we're doing, I've got a couple different nonprofits. I mean, Chelsea's gonna hate me because like, I'm gonna focus on those, but my goal is to work 20 hours a week a year from now. Yeah. But I want at least.
I'll help her out. I'll make sure I keep you accountable. So hey, you at 20 hours now?
Right, but I want half of it to be dedicated towards nonprofit work. Because I won't need as much money as I'm gonna make a year or two from now, and I want to put it to good uses. Whether, it's youth shelters or halfway houses or
make a difference
shelters. Right. And like, cause we've been, I struggle with giving back. I want to give away everything, and Chelsea's like, "Hey, we don't have that much money yet." And there was a time, that's what it was. I quit my job, and we were doing okay, and like we're going through our budget, and no, this was what it was. We went through Dave Ramsey's Financial Peace University probably 5-6 years ago, and she's like, "You're giving away $600 a month right now, and we still have debt." I'm like, "Ooh, that's a lot of money." She's like, "We don't have that much money to give away."
Yeah.
And so I like a lot of these were like nonprofits that like have a like kind of a place in my heart. Like I care a lot about them. I'm passionate about way too many things, and that's my problem. I've got like ADD for business.
It's good to be passionate about a lot of things than be passionate about nothing.
Okay, I'll accept that.
So, there you go.
Some people argue I'm too passionate about too many things, whether it's the environment or electric cars or solar or entrepreneurship or real estate investing, because like I love talking about all of it. And I can get on my soapbox pretty quickly about it, and everybody that knows me knows it. But I still have a couple of different nonprofits I want to start and run later on. But I'm going to find people to run them, pay them well, and like, again, delegating and trying to put my money to work and do better.
But I feel like people who are passionate and really care and want to give back, want to do better, they're like that with everything. They're like 100% in this, 100% in this, 100%. They all give their all. And just kind of wrap everything up. What would be your best piece of advice for like an entrepreneur like yourself, like way back when you just started? Like, what would you be your best piece of advice to like your younger self? To like, hey, what would you have done differently? Hey, this is.
I think the self-education piece, I didn't find Bigger Pockets until 3-4 years into it. I was winging it before that. And if I had just Googled how to invest in real estate, like they probably would have had an ad that popped up.
Yeah, now there's like gurus everywhere. So
right, and that's the other thing though. I tell people not to pay for classes. There's too much free information out there.
Yeah.
Go to your local real estate investors group. It might cost you some money. There are free ones out there. Trig here is amazing. It's $300 a year. And I remember going to Chelsea 4 years ago and saying, "Hey, there's this group Trig. It's a couple $100 a year. I think it's going to be worth it." And she's like, "Okay, if it's not, we're not renewing." And we did it. That's some of the best networking I've ever had in my life, And there's opportunity meetups. There's all this stuff. And like now I'm one of those guys that's like sharing the information, And it's cool because I went there at 2-3 rentals, and it's like, oh, I got to learn from this guy. He's at 10 doors,
Yeah.
And now it's funny. We went to one, and Chelsea's like on a soapbox telling people how to do the Burr method. And it was the coolest thing. We ended up going to Chicho's afterwards, and we didn't end up sitting next to each other. And we've been together forever, so it's not like, oh my God, you have to sit next to me. And I was like, oh, we'll see how she does. And she had a couple beers in her,
Yeah.
And she's at the other end of the table, and I'm talking to these people that want to get their first rental property. And I look down, and she's like instructing people on what to do. Is the coolest thing.
She's like, yeah, I had to clean up all that disaster he
Right,
created.
That's it.
I got thrown in the fire, and I got to make it successful after this.
Right. And so she like was kind of the glue that kept things together. But so a couple different pointers. I talk a lot, but get your spouse on board. Because many people, whether it's, I've got a lot of people I'm kind of coaching, and like so many of them are going at it on their own. Like, no. Get your spouse, whether it's your husband, your wife, girlfriend, I don't care. Get them in your corner. Once they're backing you up, like there was times when like I knew Chelsea was there behind me, like, I'll take on the world. I don't care what it is. I'll figure it out. She's got my back. Like, I could do anything. Mm-hmm. And like once you have that feeling of that support system, that group, and like that's the other thing, building your team, whether it's your attorney, your loan officer, your contractor, like managing those relationships is huge. So like relationships, your spouse, investing in yourself, and also self-care. I still struggle with that today. I still don't exercise. Like, I don't eat enough, which is probably why I'm skinny and I still have a decent metabolism. But like, all weekend I didn't eat breakfast or lunch either day. But like self-care in terms of exercise, just walking, literally walking. And I'm starting to do that on calls, which is helping, but like just setting that time aside is because you've got to recharge yourself a little bit too. And there were times Chelsea'd see me and she's like, "You need to go for a ride on your motorcycle. Like, get out of here, go take an hour." And I'll go put music on and just go cruise. So and it's therapeutic, whether it's get a massage or float therapy or whatever your therapy is, whatever you need. Like, that self-care is crucial. It's hard to quantify that, though. How do you prioritize 3 or 5 hours a day when you're already working 60 hours a week? You got your day job, you've got your kid, you've got your spouse you're trying to take care of, and like all of a sudden you're supposed to prioritize yourself over it. It's hard to do and it's hard to justify.
Yeah. Because that's what I started doing CrossFit, because CrossFit I can map out, hey, 1 hour,
nice.
I'm in, out, and I'm done, and it kills me.
Right.
And I could just say, how many days a week can I do this, and I'm just going to do it all this period of time. That kind of made me where I can get, like, I'm trying not to get tired because there's so much going on. It's so competitive.
Right.
I got to be 100% my family. I got to be 100% business. I got to be 100% this.
Right.
So, I got to not get tired. So how do I get there? So
Yeah, man. And it's such a struggle, but like I guess I'm kind of the example of it. Like, we lived like peasants for years and 60, 80-hour work weeks. And I remember it's like I'd hear someone who's single who works like 50 hours a week, and they're like, "Oh, I'm just so busy." I'm like, what? How? You know, here I am scaling different businesses and real estate and working 60, 70 hours a week. But like so many people are pretty lazy. They'd rather, binge watch Netflix.
I hate the word. The most annoying word is I don't have time. I don't have time.
You're not making the time.
I was like, I'm pretty sure you do. You just picking something else over what.
And that's it. And there's a time and place to binge watch Netflix. Maybe an hour a night or something.
Yeah.
And Chelsea has a certain cutoff point. Like 8:00, we put our daughter to bed. And she's like, hey, this is non-productive time. Time to relax. And I struggle with that. That's tough for me. Just to put my phone down and not work on stuff. But even then, even last night, I had a pillow set up and I was hiding from her doing a to-do list for today or working on a contract for something. But just managing that time, that self-care. But yeah, I think that's enough pointers.